And get it close to your mouth.
All
So.
right, so first off, let me introduce myself. I'm Eric Beeks. I'm out of the Dallas, Texas DFW Droid Builder. For those of you who were here Thursday, did anybody get some of the free parts that we brought up? Anyone?
Yes.
All right, so that was a gift from myself, Brian McNeese, and Bill Lottie. Long story there, but the three of us got together many years ago and just started building the droids we could get our hands on, and we had a whole bunch of parts, and this is everything that we had that was left over, and none of us wanted to build another droid for a while, so we brought that up here all the way out. So I hope y'all could have gotten your hands on some of the free parts that we brought in. So what I want to talk about today is on the Astromech and the Tex Mex framing leg kits that are available on Astromech.com. All right, so let's start out kind of a little bit of Nintendo with kind of the history of how the Tex Mex frame came to be, why it's called the Tex Mex frame, stats of what's out there, what went into the design, and then another version of it that I've been developing over the last year, making it a two-legged version for easier placement. So the design was originally started by Jamie McShane, Gustavo Canales, and myself. Gustavo is from Mexico. Jamie and I are both from Texas, so that's where we get Tex Mex. That's why we call it that. But it started sitting at a con where we were talking about the different things that, if we had to do again, what would we have done differently? What would have been better? Gustavo had not built a droid yet, and volunteered all of his camp skills to putting all of our design ideas into one package. So we built the first one, so the droid you see with Gustavo there is Tex Mex Zero. That's the first one we ever made. It is, he brags, it is still not glued together. But I mean, it just kind of goes to the testimonial of how the frame is made, how strong it is, and how sturdy it is without having to glue it all together. So that's the history of how it came to be. So we do have designs that are both CSL and CSR, so if you're an old school builder that's got a ton of parts, just you can't figure out what to do with them, you do have the CSL version available. Right now, total number of frames used, we've got about 80 CSRs out there, and a little over a dozen or so CSLs in mix. Frame is primarily made out of half-inch vaulted birch plywood. There's a little bit of MDF that you'll see here in this photo. This bottom plate is an 1/8 inch, makes it nice and smooth, covers all screws and whatnot. The rest of the frame is all 1/2 inch. So doing so helps keep the costs down. That's part of one of the goals that we had in the design. And then, in addition, it's about the time that this frame was developed, 3D printing was starting to become more and more prevalent, and we all know how much printing has changed droid building. So some of the things that you had to incorporate into your designs before, we could make it a printed part instead of having to make it out of wood to help make the mounting of parts a lot easier and not have to go through a lot of creating your own little brackets to figure out how it's going to all come together. Moving on to the next slide. So some of the goals, one was how can we lower the cost of building a droid even further? That's one of my things is where you can look at, if you've never been at a con and somebody asks how much it costs, what's the answer? Mine has always been, it's like you probably start about $1,000 and then the sky's the limit.
If your wife is next to you.
Exactly. But I mean, that's true. It does get to be a very expensive hobby, and you look at some of the things that, it's like going down that rabbit hole of how much is this thing going to go. So it's, how could we drive the cost down even further? So one of the designs was the fact that it's all made out of 1/2 inch plywood means we don't have as much different types of materials going into it. There's not as much scrap that goes into it. I made the entire kit out of one sheet of 5x5 plywood. And then during COVID, when the prices spiked up, if any of you have ever bought one of my Dejara kits that I sell as well, I've now actually started integrating parts of the Dejara table into the same sheet of wood that I do for the frame, so I can cut costs even more and spread that out across 2 different build groups as opposed to just one. So if anyone needs a Dejara kit, let me know. I've got a whole bunch of those. because I think I can make a jar kit for every 3 frames that I make. So it's all built into it that way. The other thing is integrate the mounting mechanism. So one of the things that we kind of, just kind of frustrating is how many trips we had to make to the lumber yard or to the hardware store to go buy screws or go get some aluminum channel to cut up and make a bracket for this and make a bracket for that. So we wanted to integrate as much as we could into the design. So I've got a model of the frame here. One of the things that you see here in the top, we've integrated the cross members that you see here across the top are part of the frame structure that the strength is in, but we've got an integrated cross member that you drop the slip ring in. So you kind of set a piece of wood for that and mess with the extra hardware for that one. Also in the side plates you see here are mounts for speakers that are integrated into the frame design. So you don't need to add that to it later. But also the holes are all there, just similar like you see for the aluminum frames that are out there. It's already set, the angles are already there for a 3-legged mode as well as a 2-legged mode if you want to switch between the two. It's not really set up and designed to go with the 2-3-2 mechanism. My view on that one, even though it's, weight-wise and strength-wise, it can handle that. I think if you're a 2-3-2 builder, you're probably not wanting to go to that pliable anyway. So that being the case, kind of took that decision and just said, let's just fix the way it is, because that was one of the things that I had is how to set the angle when I was trying to do it on my original R2, and it's kind of frustrating if you've ever had to do it, but that's one of the other things that we added into it as well. And then the other one is to be able to work with as many of the club spec parts where the club spec is not necessarily defined. The spec is all about what it looks like from a physical aspect, but how do you mount this part from that supplier to that supplier's other part? So we've added some notches in there to make sure that we can fit for some of the aluminum, like the pocket vents and the side vents, so it doesn't interfere with the uprights that are there. Because of where the strength comes from in the frame, we've only got 4 uprights outside of the box where the frame is, and I'll show you a little bit more of that on another slide. But by doing so is we could start fitting in a lot of the other things that are, so you as a builder don't have to figure something out that every one of us has already done before, and you're doing it on your own for the first time. So to try to make it a little bit easier for that, we have tested most of the Com8 parts, the ones that Philip Wise makes, as well as, I don't know where's Greg, there's Greg. If y'all have not ever used or seen the Fusion 360 project files that are out on the wiki, I highly recommend that you spend some time with that. Greg and I forget the other gentleman that you work with on that, Aaron Gilbert, have created a whole bunch of Fusion 360 files, the core files that are out there that allows you to take it, edit it, manipulate it. One of the things that I've done, just as an example, is with the pocket vents, not pocket vents, but the coin returns is with the way Philip Wise cuts the hole for the coin return in the skin, all you need is the back, so you can take Greg's Fusion 360 file, just take that part out of the mix, just print the back or silicone it on, and now you've got a nice coin return with little to no effort that you had to go through to make it. So you look at that and you try to say, how do I get all of these different parts in there and how to get it done? And we've incorporated as much as we can, and as new designs come out, I've got a Facebook group that I have just for people who bought the Tex Mex frame to ask questions and share their builds, their ideas, with other things, feedback to me. So we've incorporated a lot of that. I think when I started selling them in the group, I was on version 1.2 of the build. I'm now at version 1.4 with a lot of changes that we made after the initial runs and sales were done, some things that we had done that getting it further out into the group that helped. Okay. One of the other things, talking about the kits, I'm sure some of you all have seen this before, but the kits themselves they come in both just the frame or just the legs. Most people always get them together, but it does also have the body and leg hubs included in it. And if you've been around a while, you've always seen the aluminum flashing trick for that you can wrap your hubs in aluminum flashings, and put some screws to hold it in at the very bottom that nobody ever sees, and once this thing is bolted up and hidden by the skins and up against the leg, it looks like an aluminum pump. So one of the things that's also included, and you can do do that with just the aluminum flashing there. All right, let me move on to the next slide. Talk about the design itself. So I kind of touched on it a little bit about where the strength from the frame comes from. So, you know, a lot of it you'll see in uprights, you'll see it, I think the center uses the gas pipe method with the hook to the center leg on the inside. So what we do here is, since we've bolted the legs to the side plates that run here, we've eliminated the need for anything to be here in the center. And the strength comes from two 1-inch cross members across the top that are mirrored down at the bottom, and then two laminated sheets of 1/2 inch that make the 1-inch side plate on both sides. So you get all this box inside the frame. That's where all your strength comes from. That holds the whole thing together. And then the uprights, this is just a cutaway from the front of it, but there's another, you'll see it on the back as well. But these uprights here are just really there to, you know, something for the skins to hold on to so they don't cave in on you. And then the uprights that we have here are to support your center vents, and then there's a shelf across the top for where the utility arm cage would go. In addition, talking about the box and the strength, the center leg has a couple of forks that slide in on top of the cross members on the bottom, so that's where the strength comes in and then distributes all of the load. Distributes a load around the box for the frame, and that way it's nice and tight and aligned, and when you mount everything in, you've got all of your angles and such, so they're set. Talk about the uprights. One of the other things is that we've been able to move the side plates as far out to the sides as possible. And if you, after the presentation, want to come up and look at the frame, you can, and you'll see that we're as far out as we can go, because once you glue the whole thing together, that's when all of your strength comes in. The screws themselves are just really there to hold it while the glue is drying. But that way you've got even more room on the inside for electronics, gadgets, opening doors, whatever it is. Okay, moving on, more on the design. We talked about the integration a little earlier, so this is kind of a layout of all the parts that come in the frame kit here. We'll just kind of walk through from side to side. Top plate, we've got the integrated slip ring in, and we've kind of taken a little bit of fun with the fonts from Galaxy's Edge to multiple parts to kind of make it a little bit more in the universe. And, you know, so everybody knows this is the top of the top plate and it doesn't get flipped. Same thing with the bottom. I mean, I could point out in the instruction key for coin return is, but still some people always will flip it and put it on the wrong side, so bottom is the bottom. Anyway, so we've got that there. We'll talk about I've talked about the cross members for where the center leg mounts already, and that's essentially you get 8 of these, you laminate them together in the assembly process, so you can get that 1-inch by 2-inch cross member support that goes around. And then next one is I'm talking about the utility arm mount. So this is one of the more evolved pieces. The original version of the frame, and I still ship it this way, comes with a cage, a 1/4-inch MDF cage that goes around that slides into this slot that you'll see here on this assembled frame. So you can build your utility arms, put the servos and all whatever mechanisms you want to outside of the frame when you're building your droid, so you don't have to stick your hands in the frame all the time to work on it. Now, that's how we started it. We've since moved to a 3D printed skin mount version for the utility arms, and if you were lucky enough to dig through the bin, there were a few versions of that in the 3 parts together. But the nice thing about that version is it mounts directly to the skins, so the alignment of your utility arms in the slot is dead on. But again, it still has the servo mounts built into it, so you can remove the horns. You don't need to have that. When you move your utility arms, you can go direct gear straight from the servo straight to the utility arm mount itself. As well as it's also got a back plate integrated into it, so you don't need to worry about all the electronics and lights and stuff peering through when you open up your utility arm. That's one of the things that we've changed. I still include the MDF version, because not everybody has a printer, not everybody wants to print something And it's just something that's still out there. I don't think it gets used that much. I did a poll on the Facebook group a while back, and I think it was like 60% of the people wrote the 3D printed version. 30% hadn't got there yet. And then the other 10% were using the MDF version. So it's something that I think as time evolves and fewer and fewer people use it, will probably just eliminate it. But for the time being, it's still there. Okay, I think I already talked about printed parts. So it's not included in the kit, but we give the files out for free for anybody who wants to download them themselves for an integrated center vent holder. So if you've got aluminum ones or resin ones or wherever they came from, as long as they make it match the club spec, you can just slide it into the 3D printed part, and then it just bolts onto the back of the frame, nice and easy and aligned. And we've gotten some other things that have come up. We're doing like Pittman motor mounts. I think one of the other builders added a conversion for the speaker mounts to go on the front of the center vent holder, so you could not only mount speakers on the side plates, but put it on the front. So it's a group just like all of us. That, like if you've got something that you want to share, we always share with the other builders that are out there. Again, we talked about one of the things in the design is around how the legs bolt up. So they bolt directly to the frame, using the only spacer between the frame and the leg itself is the hub, which I have a version of right here. It's only an inch and a quarter thick, so you don't have a lot of torque going between your leg and your frame to hit it or pinch it or warp anything on you. It keeps the mechanism nice and tight there. And it does come with that. And these are pre-drilled already for you. It's all fitted together. The legs and the hubs are fitted with 3/8 wooden dowels for alignment and additional strength. So you don't have to worry about having getting all of that set up during your build. The frames are pre-drilled already for 3-legged and 2-legged mode. As mentioned earlier, also the frame is also all of the holes where you screw it together are already pre-drilled for you as well. We have the instructions that do say you need to pre-drill your vertical upright so the wood doesn't split on you. But all of the holes are already there, so you can just drill it, get you what you need to finish that out. One of the other things that we get a lot of questions about is whether or not there's a rear door. And on this particular frame, using aluminum skins, you don't need a rear door. The structure is held together with just a band on the skins themselves. And if you after the presentation, I've got my R5 into the black domed R5 in the back. I can show you that just use an L bracket that you can either get out of aluminum or print it on your printer. Puts a rare earth magnets on it and it holds the door in place just fine. I've run that exact, I've done that exact solution on my R2 for over 10 years. I've never had any issues with it. And all the other builders that I've seen have gone to that, but there's not a need for any kind of structure to hold your skins in place for the rear door. So I want to point that out as well. Also, I know that from sharing the package that we talked about, how do we integrate with the other part suppliers that are out there, because there's no specific club spec that says a frame has to bolt to a leg a particular way. So some builders use different mechanisms. So what we've gone with is all half-inch shoulder bolts to hold the legs to the frame, and then your foot shells to your legs, just like the aluminum ones do. And I was in a conversation just this last week. I think the Badger ones, they follow the same pattern, but because of the metrics being in 3D printing and this being Imperial, there is a version difference there, so you might need a sheet or something like that depending on what bolt you use. But they are all pre-drilled for half-inch. Kind of move in. I've mentioned on the earlier slides about the additional files. These are just some examples here. So this is an image of what the 3D printed utility arm mount looks like. This is one that's gone through several iterations, especially recently, because when it was originally designed, it was designed to be printed through shape, shipped out, instead of being able to print it yourself. So working with Gustavo, he's kept iterating on the design to make it a lot easier for you to be able to print it with your FDM printer or a resin printer. And we've also integrated a shelf on the top recently that holds your LED in place. So you don't need to come up with any special amount for that. And that all eliminates other parts that we put in there as well. So again, you're just constantly iterating there. Here's a photo of an example of the MDF OER cage, and then this is a photo of the center rifle that we use. Also, I think somebody pointed out yesterday to me is that one of the things that they had liked about the design was the fact that the uprights in the center do not flare out towards the degrees on the round frame, but they actually still go straight. So you can still mount your center base and then a whole lot easier, not have to worry about the wedge that's there from the holder to the frame itself. Okay. Let's see what we've got next here. So now I wanted to talk a little bit, this is just kind of a pet project that I've taken, is the two-legged mode version that I have. And this was just something that started with me. First time I went out to Galaxy, I just saw all the different droids everywhere that was out there, and it was like, how could I do that? I mean, you know, if any of us have Star Wars collections at home, it's how many side scale droids do you have in your collection? And as an R2 builder, it's the same thing for me. It's like, how many full-size droids can I add to my collection? And, so one of the things I wanted to do was, how could I just make a two-legged version? It doesn't cost as much money to make a two-legged as a three-legged, but then I started worrying about him tipping over and, you know, not being very stable. So I got to thinking, well, I could just punch a hole right through the foot shell, stick the leg extension all the way through, and it's kind of hard to see for everybody, but you can see, if you can see here at the bottom of this, that the leg itself goes all the way down, and the idea was I would build a base or put some kind of platform underneath and bolt the leg to that, and that's how it would stay stable. But once I bolted it all together, it'd be stable enough without the need for any of that. And then if you know somebody wanted to buy one of these, like into a two-legged mode, and then along the way they decided they wanted to move it from 2 to 3, you know, contact me. I'll make you a center leg, throw in an adapter to cut the flat part down back to the angle of what you would see for a regular 3-legged droid, and you convert it and keep on going. But the foot shell is actually one of Michael Badley's foot shells that I took the Fusion 360 file, remixed it, and closed it all in instead of the way his attaches from kind of like a leg to an ankle to a foot shell. It doesn't have as clean of a break if you were using steel foot shells or wooden legs. So I made it to look more like one of the steel or aluminum foot shells that were out there. And then I punched a hole through the bottom to slide the leg through. And it holds by itself rather easily. As you can see here, it stands on its own. And here's an R5D4 that I made. It was a celebration last year. And it's been a great droid. It's been nice and stable. And the other thing is, you know, I talk about this was my personal desire, but for any of us who've ever sat in at a con and had somebody come up to our booth and wanting to know if we sell the droids, and we say no, they're like, well, how do I get one? It's like, well, you have to build one. I don't know anything about remote control stuff. I don't want to mess with all that complicated things. The next thing we always do is tell them to go buy a sideshow. If that's all they want, go buy a sideshow. But I thought with this idea, we could do a frame, we could do legs. I mean, my frames are $200. The legs are $270. They're cheaper if they're a two-legged version. And you know, you could go in and you could actually get into a droid for $2,000. That's far cheaper than anything you get from the sideshow. Not to mention a whole lot more accurate. And somewhere along the way, that droid builder is going to say, okay, I feel comfortable enough about this. I think I want to do the RC. You know, now we've got another member of our club. Well, that's kind of the evolution of how that came to be, why that is what it is. But it's a fun thing to do. If you're into Star Wars collecting, you can also go in there and add more full-size one-to-one droids to your collection for a little bit cheaper than you would going through some of the other methods of doing that. And then the last thing I wanted to just kind of show before you take any questions is just you know, some examples of some of the droids that have been done using the Tex Mex system since I started selling them through the club. You know, some of the droids that are here. I know Brian and his R5 OK is here. Hunter, you're at, but your Droid is here. And I've got my R5 and 2 here as well. But these are just some of the ones that I've seen posted by the builders that have finished theirs and shared their photos with me. Get those done. So I think that kind of takes me through what I had. I do have 3 kits here with me. If anybody's interested and wants to save themselves on shipping, it's a good opportunity to get a frame and make it while we're at Droid Con. If we go ahead and see if there's any questions. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
Here we go.
It's not a question.
Thanks, sir. I just had, I was curious if you had any tips or tricks for finishing the future.
Yeah, so one of my previous life, I did auto body work for a while, and one of the things that I do, I glue the legs together. As I said earlier, they're all keyed with 3/8" dowel to hold them all together. Once they're solid, I like to use either a shellac spray primer or a lacquer primer. It dries really fast and seals up all the pores on the wood. You used to be able to buy a Zinsser 123 shellac primer at any Home Depot or Lowe's. They used to be like $8 a can, but in the COVID world, it's like $20 a can. Now it's crazy. But you can also use lacquer, and there's also a clear shellac that you can use. So I use that as a base, get it all sealed up, and then I'll wipe it with Bondo to seal up all the edges, sand it multiple times, and then once I feel comfortable with it, I'll switch over to the standard 2-in-1 auto body primer from sand until it's smooth and you're happy with it, and go from there. Okay, good question. Anyone else? Yes?
Here.
Oh.
I was just trying to figure out who's that, but.
It looks like there's a hole cut out at the bottom for like a third, automated third leg.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible, and does that ruin the stability?
The hole on the bottom is to mount the center leg. And I think it's just one of those, we've seen designs over the years in the club. Some of them just close it in, some of them don't. We decided to keep it open because of the way the structure is, to bolt it straight to the cross members, but there's nothing saying that we couldn't just keep it closed up and go straight to it. The only real issue I think we would see is the screws that you would use to mount it would be going kind of blindly into where that would be, and by doing it the way we have it, is you can kind of see the mount and line it all up that way. But it's not necessarily there for 232, but it is there that you can go in and pull the third leg off and just make them stand there in static mode. Yes, sir.
So, what do you do with humidity or wind expansion?
Once you seal it up with the shellac, you don't really have to deal with the humidity or expansion. I live in Dallas, and I've never had any issues with it. I'm not aware of any climate issues around any other areas that would ever have any impact on it. But the plywood is a fairly stable wood. It's not a solid wood, which would more solid hardwood is where you tend to run into expansion issues and warpage issues. This is all Baltic birch. I mean, even with the war in Ukraine and everything being shut down in Russia, we can still get Baltic birch in some of the other Eastern Bloc countries. I mean, it's, if you've ever wondered why is Baltic birch so special compared to the stuff you buy at Home Depot or whatever, it's the manufacturing process that they use to make that plywood. It is void-free. It is essentially 8-inch thick veneers, not whatever crap wood they want to come in with full of knots and are hollow and holes and voids. And if you ever picked up a sheet of Baltic birch plywood compared to a regular sheet of birch plywood, Baltic birch is a whole lot heavier because there's no air in it. And that's where the strength. That's why when somebody says, "Oh, this is Baltic birch," that's why you build it out of that. You just don't build it out of your Home Depot or Lowe's supply.
Here, not a question, but a thank you for your instructions.
Thank you.
Well put together, more than some of the other things I've got club members, but thank you.
Appreciate it. So, You know, and that's you know, that's part of the community. So when we have, I mean, I don't know, I can't remember everybody that was there at the very beginning, but I mean, I got all kinds of feedback. I mean, I went through several iterations after I opened this up to the whole group. I mean, I go back to the history. We started the design in 2013, 2014. We're prepared to launch it on the club at Celebration 2015, and then that's when the CSR standard rolled out. Well, crap, we don't have a CSR design, so we was like, oh, let's do this at the next celebration, and kind of, you know, lost interest and kind of moved on. But then with Disney making more content, we started getting more people, and in the Texas area, I had more and more requests coming through the Central Texas Droid Builders Group, the Dallas Builders Group, guys out of Mexico, San Antonio, were all asking, and it kind of started growing and growing to the point where it's like, okay, I really ought to do this through the club, make it available for everybody. There's enough interest that's out there. And then we started doing that, and when that happened is when all of the feedback kind of blew up, and we really started making some changes, and it became more of a group effort based on all the different ideas and approaches to building that are out there. So, thank you. Any other questions?
Do you have to do anything to the frame if you want to put like skin, like hinges for the doors?
Right now there is not. It's not built into. There's several manufacturers of hinges that are out there. So that's one of those things that's kind of hard to get my hands on every single kind of hinge that's there. But yeah, you do have to do a little dremeling that's there. On my R5M2 is hinged on all the front panels. I didn't do the back. They're all glued shut because I just didn't mess with all the electronics, but I just wanted to tension out. And that's something that I'm going to port over from the CSL to the CSR design in the future. But the big thing will be is that even with what changes could make, you're still going to have to do it somewhat manually based on what doors you want to open and whose hinges you're going to do. But there'll be more meat on the frame to be able to hand go in there and add that. So, good question. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, on your aluminum frames, they use both bushings and metal plate and a shoulder connection. Would you recommend that for adding strength to that? And also on the ankle, there's a brass bushing at that bolt one.
The design takes use of the brass bushing in the ankle where the legs bolt on. That's ported over. That's one of the things that I think it was originally done on the Jag frames and Jag legs. For those who've been around long enough to remember those, and that's just kind of something that's stuck with the club ever since. So because that seemed to kind of, even though it's not a club spec standard, it kind of became the defined way of doing it. So we included that into it. And then your question at the shoulder, I mean, you know, nobody's going to turn down additional bracing, but you don't need it. It's, you know, we've got over 100 installations out there now, and that's definitely not an issue. Right. Any other questions? All right, if there isn't anything else, we can go ahead and close out. Again, I've got my R5M2, which is the black domed R5 in the back, as well. Brian McNean's is orange domed R5, and then Neely Lyon's R2 that's out in the hallway. They're all built off of the Tex Mex, and Hunter, I don't know what your designation is. Yours is the blue and yellow one out in the hallway is the Tex Mex, and then Todd's got the white one here in the corner is also Tex Mex if you want to take a look on the inside and see what's there. And I'll be available for the rest of the day if anyone has any questions for me. I won't be here tomorrow, but I'll be here for the rest of the day.
Thank you.